Hey guys, welcome to Storytime with Jester. As you can see, I am wearing an outfit a little bit different. This is December. It's 3 days from Christmas, and this is my Georgia Claus outfit. So, I will be continuing the saga of Andor and his friends in my novel, The Book of Prophecies. We will pick up where we left off last time, at chapter 58. Miranda had spent the last 2 months locked away in her chambers. She pored over large tomes and cast spell after spell of divinatory nature in a possessed effort to find a way to rid her of her condition. Finally, with what she believed to be the correct information, she cast a spell that allowed her mind to travel to far distant planes, the places of the gods themselves. She risked sanity, even death, in this undertaking, but given the alternative, it was a risk worth taking. Her mind probed through the cosmos, the images almost overwhelming as she raced towards her destination, her mind going farther and farther out until it sensed the being of her seeking, or more likely, the being sensed her. Regardless, she put forth her questions, which were but half a dozen. But all led up to the one final query, the one response she waited to hear, the response that made her heart leap in her chest and give her hope. Like all the responses thus far, it was but one word, one powerful, joyous word. Yes. Chapter 59. Lightning lit up the lavender sky as the ground shook with the rumbling of the thunder. Heavy rain pounded the combatants mercilessly as they slogged around in the mud in their attempt to kill the other. A garish gnome, and a blue-skinned creature no bigger than the gnome, had a mage pinned to the ground, each holding an arm. That left the priest of Finian, the stout dwarf, and the tall, slender elf to battle an enormous demon. The demon had attempted to overcome his foes with magic, but the trio had quickly closed to melee, giving them the advantage despite the demon's size. As a result, the demon's bright green fur was turning red from all the wounds it was suffering. The priest's sword, the dwarf's mace, and the elf's bardiche were finding purchase on their gigantic target. Suddenly, another figure appeared out of nowhere. He wore plate armor and carried a shield bearing the image of a spotted owl clutching a lightning bolt in each talon. With his sudden appearance, the demon, having had enough, fled by teleporting away. "Pedius!" Ulrich, the priest of Finian, exclaimed upon seeing his friend. "We thought you dead. How? Where?" Before he could respond, a flash of lightning, followed immediately by an enormous clap of thunder, nearly sent everyone sprawling in the mud. A small cloud with multicolored lights flashing from within appeared at the point of impact of the bolt. A raven-haired woman dressed in a black cloak stepped out of the cloud as if she rode the bolt down from the sky. She lifted a hand as if to strike the entire group down, and then paused. "You," the witch said, staring straight at Pedius. "You I know." Then, as if shaking herself out of a trance, she addressed the others. "You are fortunate this night that you are in his company. Yes, fortunate." And with that, the witch was gone, as quickly as she came. Andor's Journal. Starday 41, 1232. Yesterday, Eric arrived here in Sanctuary. With him was Aslanor. I had never met the wizard before, and was not prepared for the man that stood before me. He stood 6 foot even, at one time had brown hair, but was now mainly white with brown streaks. Even his beard had this coloration. Only his eyebrows were left untouched by age. His dress was remarkable. Rather than the robes that usually accompanied someone of his profession, he wore a blue jerkin embroidered on the trim with runes. Over his jerkin he wore a blue tabard, longer in the back so it swished when he moved. His gloves were fingerless, covered down to his forearms, and were the same blue-gray that his knee-high boots were. The thing that stood out most, however, was his eyes. Brown in color, they had an intensity about them that gave the impression they could see deep into your soul, yet put you at ease at the touch of kindness that twinkled when he smiled. We sat down, enjoyed a bottle of Venetian wine he brought, and after a lengthy discussion that nearly lasted all day, the protectors have a new leader, Eric relinquishing his role as such. The new protectors are as follows: Aslenor, Eric, Andor, Jovan, Marikai, and Xavier. Chapter 60. The Fortuitous Five, as they called themselves, were celebrating their recent success and fortune as they walked the streets of Osnaburg. "Tell us again," the inebriated Malhader. Let me try that again. "Tell us again," the inebriated Malhader Fogner said, "how you came to come." He paused, a puzzled look on his face, as he was unsure of the words that were coming out of his mouth. "How you come to came," he began again, then paused once more, totally confused with his incoherence. "What Mal is painfully and unsuccessfully trying to say," Fizz interrupted, "is he wants to hear your story of the Ram Riders again." "Ah, you mean the Buttheads," Pedius exclaimed, finally understanding. "Well, you see," he began, "after I drew the moon card from the old man's deck of cards, I was granted 3 wishes. Well, I don't have to tell you, I was all but ready to get out of, or get back to you fellows, so we could kick some more butt. When speaking my first wish, I wasn't quite specific enough, so rather than be reunited with my friends here," he paused as he put his arms around Ulrich and Veril Ferris, the latter who quickly removed his arm from her shoulder, "I ended up somewhere near Brandenburg in the foothills. I was surrounded by a band of nasty orcs, still badly wounded from the fight with the demon spider, and quickly saying prayers to Hieronymus, when out of nowhere those giant rams with dwarven riders came bounding past me, slammed into the orcs, and scattered them." He slipped his other arm from around Ulrich's neck and placed both hands on Mal's shoulders, looking him square in the eyes as much as he could, given his current condition, and said, "Your kin saved my life that day. I will always be beholding to you little buggers." "A toast to the Buttheads," Mal said, raising an empty hand to the sky. "I believe you'll need a drink first, Mal," Fizz said. "Why don't we go to our bar and treat everyone to a round?" "Aye, that sounds like the thing to do," Mal agreed. The Fortuitous Five stumbled their way into the Imp and Satire Inn. Up in the night sky, silent and unseen, flew a beast, vulture-like but void of flesh, with tattered wings which somehow still managed to catch the air currents as it made its descent into the city. Its rider was a figure whose head was bathed in fire. The beast landed in a back alley, and the rider made his way quietly into a low building. Soon he emerged, clutching a large tome which he placed in a sack and mounted the beast once again. As the beast took to the sky, the building erupted in smoke and flames, causing an alarm to sound throughout the city. Back at the inn, the Fortuitous Five had finished for the evening, at least at this establishment. There were other bars still awaiting their patronage. They were making their way, somewhat unsuccessfully, down the street when a large vulture-like beast, bearing a rider whose head was bathed in fire, landed abruptly amidst them. Stunned and ill-prepared to react to such an occurrence given their condition, they could only but stare at the creatures before them. The rider, who was holding something that looked like a beating heart, turned to face Mal. The object was pulsating at an extremely fast rate, as if homing in on something very close. The rider pointed a finger at Mal and said in a hollow voice, "Give me the rod." Chapter 61. Plumes of white smoke lifted out of the chimneys of the small village like a room full of gnomes puffing pipes. The village was nestled at the base of an enormous snow-covered mountain that blocked the sun from giving any reprieve from the bitter cold. Inside a tavern sat two figures by the fire, a bear cloak and reindeer jacket hanging on hooks from the mantel in order to dry. "So what brings you to this desolate place so far removed from mankind?" asked the female of her half-orc companion. He was a brute of a figure, standing nearly 7 feet tall and over 300 pounds, with jet-black eyes set back in his bald skull. He had the protruding tusks common in all the orcs, giving no question to his heritage. His armor was unique, nothing his companion had ever seen before. It was full-plate armor, but the double pauldrons were enlarged with curved pointed guards extending higher than the top of his helm, which seemed to wrap around his face, creating a Y slit going from his chin to the corners of his eyes. He wore a chain skirt that was designed like a tabard, hanging just below his pollens, which had a spike in the center of each. He had a large single tasset, worn to protect his manhood rather than those normally worn to protect the upper thighs. It bore the embossed image of a skull. He wore what seemed to be another tasset on his chest, which was embossed with a design that looked like the horned demon image that was on his huge circular shield. The demon image had a screaming mouth and large ram horns. He wore a large floor-length cloak that was purple on the inside and electric blue on the exterior, topped off with a fur mantle. His appearance was the gaudiest thing she had ever seen, except for possibly the illusionary image Marikai had set in his ring of change. "I seek to slay the dragon of the mountain," he said calmly and flatly. He wasn't much for conversation, as he did not return the query. Seeing she was going to have to do all of the talking, if not to go crazy, she pressed on. "So, what is your name?" "I'm Miranda." This was Miranda in her true form, that of the blonde with the violet eyes. She wore a long turquoise skirt, slit on both sides to her hips, where she wore an ivory claw belt. The bottom of her skirt was trimmed in yellow, matching her halter. Normally she wore the same sandals with laces up to her knees as she did in her Shadowcat image, but due to the harsh climbs, she wore knee-high fur boots. Around her neck she wore an amulet bearing runes. He answered with more of a grunt than anything. "Krunk." Chapter 62. The trio trudged along, wrapped in their bear-skinned furs, saying ne'er a word. The land they trekked was frigid tundra, lifeless as the void, as were the hearts of the three that dared the hazards of such a bleak place. But it was not the land that caused their dour demeanors. The gnome looked ahead at the group's leader. How long ago, it seemed, did he accompany a group of adventurers to a temple, only to lose them all save for his dwarf friend? He took a glance behind him at Mal, whose eyes stared blankly ahead at the snow and the ski tracks made by him and Ulrich. Ulrich, the last of a second group of adventurers that he entered yet another temple with and came out once again wanting. When he gets to a place that is warm and dry, he will make an entry in his journal as to how he thinks that he does not like temples very much. He had gotten to know Veilril and Pedius quite well in the short time that he had known them. They were such opposites, those two. Veilril was serious, thoughtful, and calculating, while Pedius was, well, Pedius. Fizz smiled for the first time in a while at that thought. Pedius was very brave, he thought. Foolish at times, very foolish, but very brave. And funny. Not funny like Mal. Different. Then, looking at Ulrich again, he added to his thoughts, much different than that pompous ass that now leads them. His brief smile ended as quickly as it had come. Mal was also lost in thought as his eyes were on autopilot following the tracks of his companions. I dare say if Ulrich and Fizz had walked off a cliff, Mal would have blindly followed. He blamed himself for the loss of his two friends. Friends that lost their lives in a temple they would have never even been in had it not been for his own greed. It had been hidden away in a secret vault in Aslinor's castle. It had almost called out to him when he first discovered it. Oh, but if he had only left it where it lay, none of this would have happened, would be happening. His friends would be alive, and he himself would be back at his inn, sitting by the fire and warming his belly with a pint of ale. Fire. That blasted creature with the fire face. What did he want with the rod? The Council of Magi would not say. They would only say that the rod was a very powerful magical item that needed to be returned at once. Tracking old Firepuss led them to the temple, which in turn is where Velril and Pedius died. For whatever reasons, their bodies, or what was left of them in Velril's case, could not be raised or resurrected. So here they were, tracking rumors of Flamehead and legends of a throne where the gods grant your every desire. Folly and hogwash! Ulrich was lost in thought as well, but of a different kind than his two companions. Oh, he grieved over the loss of Velril and Pedius, but the fact that they were unable to be revived only showed, in his eyes, that they lacked something worthy of life, some flaw that the gods deemed unfitting to allow back in the world. Unlike himself, who was flawless in character and deed, hence why he was still here, and they were not. If this throne of the gods did exist, then let the others ask for their return. No, he would be asking for something that had eluded him thus far in his life, something that was worthy to be held in his hands, to battle those of unrighteousness, a blade as bright as the sun itself. And that, my friends, is where we will end tonight's reading. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. Please make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and bell notifications. And make sure you share with all your friends so that they can come here and enjoy these readings as well. Also, make sure you leave comments in comments section, because I do love to get those, and I will respond as quickly as possible. Also, as I do not have a tip jar or a Patreon account, you can help out this channel by purchasing the book that I am currently reading to you guys, the Book of Prophecies. It is in hardback, paperback, and ebook formats, and you can get those links by going to the account section, the About section in this channel, or the About section in my Facebook page, James Richmond Author. So, until next time, which will be after Christmas, so Merry Christmas, everyone. And as always, see you soon.